All right, good morning and welcome to TAO's next session of our Executive Resiliency series. This one's Crisis Communications in a Crisis, and we're pleased to have Jeannice Hall with us. I'm Skip Newberry, President and CEO of the Technology Association of Oregon, and a couple of rules of engagement that we'll cover before we get started. All participants have been muted, so please remain on mute unless a TAO staff member unmutes you and calls on you to speak. You may ask or respond to questions in the chat box publicly or privately by directing your message to Kara Snow or Justin Martinez. We'll ask you all to engage via the participant icon on your screen, and we'll monitor the chat box throughout the discussion and respond throughout. Please engage with us on social media during the conversation today. Any screenshots that get shared socially with me and Jeannice will, of course, get a reshare from us. Due to the limited time, we'll capture all questions in the chat and shift any unanswered ones to Mobilize, which is our online community engagement platform. And it's TAO's virtual community. We'll post unanswered questions from our members there, which means that's where you're going to see them. If you have any questions about joining Mobilize, feel free to reach out to Justin, whose email is on the screen. And if you have any questions about joining TAO, please reach out to membership@techoregon.org. TAO staff support is provided today by Kara and Justin. Please reach out to them with feedback, questions, comments, or if you're interested in sponsoring. A big thanks to Packstar and the leadership of their CEO, Peggy Miller, for underwriting the series. We couldn't do this without her. Join us later this morning. We're going to do a double header practically with U.S. Senator Ron Wyden. That's going to be at 9:30 a.m. and that'll be the next session in our Resiliency series. It's now my pleasure to introduce Jeannice Hall, Senior Communications Director at ADP. Jeannice's career spans 20 years in various corporate communications roles. Prior to ADP, she worked in Southern Company, a large multi-state utility company based in the Southeast. And she's based in Atlanta, where she's an avid runner and mom to Winston, an opinionated English Bulldog. Thanks for joining us today, Jeannice.
Thank you, Skip. I appreciate it. I just want to quickly check and make sure everyone can hear me.
We're good.
Great. Wonderful. We did a mic check earlier, but always want to verify. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. I want to first thank you for your kind invitation to join today. There are no parts of our worlds, personal or professional, that haven't been touched by COVID. So it's not lost on me that you're taking time away from your regular schedules to join in this discussion, and it's sincerely appreciated. I particularly also want to echo what Skip said and thank Packstar for their support of the series. I've seen and heard some of the great content shared, and I know how valuable it is for many listeners and viewers. I'm really looking forward to diving into the world of crisis communications and find ways where we can all collaborate during interesting times to find mutual benefit, even in worlds of crisis. So as Skip said, my name is Jeannice Hall, and I currently serve as the Senior Director of Communications for ADP's outsourcing division. Many of you are likely familiar with ADP, which is a time-tested human capital management organization. We serve over 810,000 clients across 140 countries, delivering payroll to more than 40 million people around the world. So the division I serve in, again, is HRO outsourcing, and it's focused on two strategic areas: professional employment organizations or co-employment, and then strategically bundled HR services. So in my role, I work with a team that we have lovingly named the Creative Shop, which is an internal style marketing and advertising agency that's encompassed of about 20 creative ninjas, as I call us. We focus on creative writing, artistic design, client experience, digital marketing, and surveying and capturing insights, all to help us better serve our clients. And the Creative Shop's mission is very simple. We work every day to create marketing and communications materials for ADP that are two things: radically simple and emotionally connected, all deeply rooted in client experience. So I spend my days working with the team that plan, develop, and create and execute these important and impactful experiences. And as Skip said, outside of work, I'm an avid runner. I'm a mom to a 45-pound English Bulldog named Winston, a 15-pound neurotic cat named Nino, who you will likely hear behind me as we're talking today, and wife to an Ironman, my husband, Doug. And again, you will likely hear Nino on the call today, so I apologize in advance for any meows in the background.
Well, thanks for that background, Jeannice. I'm wondering, prior to the pandemic, was there a previous crisis where you put together a plan from a communication standpoint? And I'm wondering if so, if you'd be willing to kind of walk us through how you put that together. What was it comprised of?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of different crises I've worked on in my career. As you mentioned, I've worked in the energy space, in the electric and gas utility business, and then I currently work in the human capital management industry. In the energy and gas business, we dealt with crisis all the time as it related to weather, as it related to outages, as it related to people. And in the human capital management space, we've also dealt with crises as well. And what I'd like to share, when I think about that question, is a pretty simple formula that I recommend anytime you're dealing with crisis. Whether it's a reorganization, whether it's an outage in an electric industry, or whether it's a cyber event. Because I think if you know this simple formula, you can create your own crisis management plan. And of course, the best crisis management plan is the one you never have to use. So by having it ready, you're already one step ahead of your competition. So the formula I like to share and help you remember is pretty simple. And it's remembering the numbers 2, 3, 5, and 6. And I understand we can provide slides after this presentation, so I will likely recap what I'm about to cover in a slide because I think it will help articulate it even further. So as I mentioned, the number 2 is first, and that is for 2 distinct buckets of messages, and that's an internal message and an external message. Pretty simple. Number 2, internal message, external message. Then I want you to remember the number 3. And this is pretty simple as well, because there are likely 3 plans you will need for 3 key events anytime you're dealing with a crisis. And that's related to people, weather, or technology. People being it can be a rapid departure of an executive, or it could even be a reorganization. Weather, hurricane, snowstorm, tornado, earthquake, as we're seeing today in Nevada. And then technology, and I probably don't have to explain that to this very sharp crowd, but anything related to cyber, data, or anything in between. So again, the first number was 2, internal and external messages. The second number, 3, the 3 likely topics you'll be covering anytime you're talking about a crisis. Then I want you to remember the number 5. And the number 5 is because those are the questions that you need to ask yourself so that you can develop your crisis communication plan. And those 5 questions are, who am I going to call first if a crisis in this scenario takes place? Who will serve on my core team for the incident? Who will the company need to approve messages before they are shared? Who will speak with the media? And who will give regular updates? And again, this is why I'm going to create a slide for you and share it after this call. But again, the number 5, who am I going to call first? Who will serve on the core team for the incident? Who will approve all messages? Who will speak with the media? And who will give regular updates? And you can cover most anything you need with those 5 questions as it relates to, as we talked about, the 3 incidents you will likely have occur with the 2 distinct audiences you're speaking with. And then, as I mentioned, the last is the number 6. And the number 6 is the 6 things you should draft in advance for any crisis communications. You should go on ahead and draft an employee message, talking points for your employees, executive talking points, and a video script. That's for internal. Again, employee talking points, an employee message, executive talking points, and a video script. And then the number 5 and number 6 are for external. And you should be going on ahead and drafting an email to your clients about the incident and begin your FAQs. Wouldn't necessarily say that you need to, of course, draft the answers to the FAQs, but you should be thinking about the key questions your clients will likely be asking. So again, I'd like to just recap the formula really quickly. 2, 3, 5, and 6. 2 are your audiences, internal and external. 3 are the incidents you will likely be managing: people, weather, technology. 5 are the questions that you need to ask yourself to be preparing your crisis communication plan. And 6 is the number of pieces that you should go on ahead and draft in advance. So that is what I recommend to go on ahead and have prepared for a fully vetted communications plan that you can have waiting on you anytime an incident takes place. This is the formula I've used for years in my career, and I found it very helpful. Not only is it helpful to have the plan ready to go should an incident take place, it is also extremely helpful just for peace of mind. Peace of mind with yourself, peace of mind with your team, and peace of mind with your leadership to know that you are prepared for when an incident takes place. And again, hopefully you never have to use it, because the best crisis communication plan is one you never have to use.
Thanks, Jeannice. I mean, that's super easy to understand and very helpful from a remembering standpoint. Appreciate it. And as you mentioned, we'll be happy to share these out with a slide afterwards. Yeah, so with this crisis in particular, like what your days look like? What are some of the things you've been focused on as the crisis has unfolded?
Oh gosh, yeah. That is a really great question, and I appreciate you asking. As I mentioned before, what my team focuses on day to day, and that's creating radically simple and emotionally connected materials for ADP. And since this crisis has taken place, I've actually had to go back to my childhood. And I'm hoping that my camera will show you. I'm wearing a very special t-shirt today, and it says, "Take courage." And I wore this shirt on purpose. Number one, because I'm presenting via video, which takes a little bit of courage. But also, what we're going through today, each and every one of us are having to take a lot of courage. And I want to tell you a little bit about this phrase. I was very fortunate to be raised by my grandparents. And my grandfather had this phrase, and it was his mantra: take courage. He started using the phrase as a young man when he worked as a bricklayer in the sweltering heat of the Louisiana bayou. And he took the phrase to 3 wars with him. He served in Korea, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And he raised me and taught me this phrase. And every day I've woken up and reminded myself during COVID-19 that we must all take courage. So that is how I've been starting my days during this pandemic, because the other part of this pandemic that's so completely different than many other crises that I've worked with in my career is we currently have no end game. We don't know when this is going to end. With an outage, you typically know 48, 72 hours that lights are going to be back on for your clients. With a snowstorm, you typically know that roads will be cleared at a certain date. With flooding, you typically know when the waters are going to recede. None of us know what the next steps are with the pandemic. We're planning and we have phases, and those are all great things, but we don't really know when it's gonna end. So that requires a lot of courage. So from a business perspective, I've been applying this phrase in our work and in our writing. And given that part of our division focuses on co-employment, we've been communicating about the pandemic since February, and we haven't let our foot off the gas. And our key areas that we've been focusing on are, as many of you all are informed of, regulatory impacts and legislation. So we've been creating easy to find and navigate information to help our clients make important decisions about everything from the Small Business Administration's Payroll Protection Program to the FFCRA and other legislative needs. We've been also helping our clients and guiding through the people part, furloughs, how they've had impacts to benefits and other tough kitchen table economic decisions that our clients and their employees are making. The second area we've really been focused on is risk and safety. So we've been providing CDC and OSHA information to our clients and their employees, but also helping them determine safety practices that they should consider as they look at potentially reopening their businesses and when. As Skip, you said earlier, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, so we are in a state that is opening up sooner than many other states, but the considerations are still the same. And it's a very difficult position for any client in business to be put in, particularly related to the fact that we've never been through this before, so it's all new. And then the third area we've currently started shifting to is because we do have states like Georgia that are opening, is we're shifting to a getting back to business program. We're helping determine frameworks and toolkits that provide information to our clients and their employees so they can determine how to safely and carefully consider reopening their businesses and the next steps they need to take to do that. So to kind of circle back on your question on what my days have been like since this has taken place, my days have involved a lot of opportunities to remind myself to take courage. I hope that you all will continue taking courage as you walk this journey that none of us have been through before, applying that courage to others, and using that courage. We've been working to formulate our communications and marketing in a way that helps our clients and their employees determine the next best steps for them and their businesses and their families.
Well, I think it's really interesting you mentioned that you know, you're viewing this as sort of a rolling crisis, right? It's not a single event like most typical crises are, and that's something that, you know, presents a challenge in that we're all in this new environment, making it up as we go along. Essentially, it's all new. So I'm wondering, like, what are some best practices that you might be able to share with some of our audience as it relates to how you've been dealing with communications in this particular crisis?
Well, that's a great question, Skip. Thank you. And funny enough, you mentioned, you know, we don't all know what we're doing. I actually try to write on LinkedIn regularly. As a communicator, I enjoy writing. And one of my most recent articles was quoting my husband, who very lovingly one evening when I was spiraling on a communication told me, "Relax, Jeannice, no one knows what they're doing." Nobody's been through this before. But yes, we have been applying a lot of best practices to our communications, and that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. I'd actually love to share 4 tips that we've been working with to apply. And one of them, I think you'll find interesting in that it has nothing to do with a crisis. You have to put goodwill in the bank before the incident. You have to think about your messages and you have to think about your clients before things go bump in the night, as they say. If you have goodwill deposited in the bank, your impacted audiences are going to be more likely to forgive any snafus or minor issues. Recently, ADP did some research that has shown us that in any world-class service organization, when clients feel loved, cared for, and they feel kindness, despite any other errors, they are 58% more likely to still give you a 9 or 10 on NPS results. And when clients feel they are treated with frustration or impatience, 69% are more likely to give you a lower score. Those are true business impacts. So I would say the first of my 4 tips is put goodwill in the bank on the front end, because that is going to help you see you through the crisis and allow you to have some forgiveness from the folks that you're serving. My second tip is to speak with a unified and a human voice. When you're in a partnership with a client, an employee, or a vendor, it is not an us versus them situation. It's vital to be coordinated and aligned on messages, sensitivities, and how both parties present themselves internally and externally. So lead by example by sharing a unified and human voice. The third tip is do no harm. This is PR lesson 101. If you remember nothing else today, remember do no harm, and you have graduated from PR 101. When I say do no harm, because I get asked a lot what that means, it means you need to be thinking about your brand, your financials, your legal perspective, your people, your systems, and everything in between when you're solutioning for a crisis. So be mindful and thoughtful about each step to ensure you're doing no harm to any side of the coin. And this means when you're going into writing a press statement or a social media response or even a personal response in an email, you think about all sides of that prism. You ask yourself, will this statement help our customer service side of the business, but maybe cause a defeat to a vendor? Or is the payroll office going to succeed, but legal going to have a trouble with this statement? So do no harm across your organization. And then the fourth tip I will share is if you don't tell your story, someone else will. So when you're in the face of a crisis, you need to get out in front of it, and you need to be ready to have an explanation and tell your story, and you must have your voice be heard on behalf of your brand. Because if you don't tell your story, someone else will take advantage of the situation and tell it for you.
Great recommendations. We got a question from the audience that is, I think, kind of interesting. So there's been this conventional wisdom that at least I've come across in the crisis, which is, more communications is better. You want to keep a regular dialogue with people, and it's not possible to overshare. But this person questions, is it possible even in a crisis to have too many communications where you just create confusion or kind of numb people to the message?
I love that question, and I'm so glad you asked it. Thank you for speaking up. I've been working in this career for over 20 years, and I am one who thinks the more you can package communications together, the better, so that you can eliminate email fatigue, social media fatigue. And I've actually been taught a really important lesson through this crisis. About a month ago, a peer on my team who runs our client experience division started hosting one-on-one interviews with ADP clients and asking them that specific question. And all clients told them, you cannot overshare with me right now. Every single client. Now, I would frame that in the sense of, again, we are in a co-employment environment in the division that I'm in. So we are helping serve those clients through all HR matters. But given that environment, I was shocked to hear that we could not overshare during this time, because I was still working with my team to bundle and package communications together to streamline. And I was quickly reminded that in the face of this much change and in the face of this much time where we're all taking courage, that you cannot overshare. I was shocked.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So we were just given the 5-minute warning, and I think we got time for one more question here from the audience before we wrap it up. But you also have responsibility for internal communications, and I'm wondering to employees, like, what have you been doing to address employee anxiety at this point?
Great question. And one of the reasons I love working at ADP, and one of the reasons that I joined ADP, was their authenticity and their transparency. So in my division, in the HRO division, we have been issuing a daily bulletin to all associates about important matters that are going on so that they can feel informed and engaged. We are not just including them on new release information for regulations and legislation, we're also providing them copies of anything that we've provided our clients so that they can be fully informed. So of course, a daily email. We've also been having a weekly webinar with associates that they can choose to log into. And we have professionals from the legal world, the tax world, and a variety of other subject matters within ADP. That it's truly a live Q&A session, and associates can submit questions in advance, or they can submit questions during the webinar. But we have been hosting those weekly for about 10 weeks now. And we have created an internal hotline for associates only. So if they feel they need support in helping address a client issue right away, they have a team of subject matter experts at their fingertips to call and work through an issue with them. So there are other ways we've been serving our associates as well, but those are 3 key ways that we've been doing it, because the more you inform them, the more they can feel empowered and feel that they can better serve their clients and those client employees.
Great. And we've been asking the same question of all of our featured guests, which is, in this virtual environment we now find ourselves, like, what's your most awkward sort of conference call experience to date? Or it could be you personally or someone in your network.
Oh, that's a great question. I would have to say it's happened during this call, because if you haven't heard my cat, he has been walking all around this desk right now, having a complete meltdown. And about 5 minutes ago, my front door rang and my dog barked. So you have witnessed my biggest conference mishap when I'm presenting to TAO. So yay.
We're glad to have been there with you during your most embarrassing moment to date. So we appreciate it. No, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning, and some really great insight that you were able to share with our audience, so we appreciate it. And also, we wanted to make sure we thank Peggy Miller and the team at Packstar again for their support. Really appreciate all that they've done for us in this time. And yeah, thank you all for joining us. And again, if folks are interested, we're going to have U.S. Senator Ron Wyden in about another half an hour. So looking forward to that. And that's a wrap. So have a great weekend, everyone. And Jeannice, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Skip. Thank you, TAO team.
Thank you.